Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Drop-In Morning Show, where the Teach Better team is live every single morning, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern. We are currently streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And also a special shout out to those of you who are listening on the Teach Better Talk podcast. We have a ton in store for you. Guys, Taylor McCormick is in the house, who you may not know, but she is a very familiar face to our Teach Better team, and we are really excited to introduce her to our community. We also have a good news story, some holidays, because of course today is a big one. It is May the 4th. And of course, we'll get into our discussion and encouragement around Teacher Appreciation Week, which is a very, very special week we've had the opportunity to celebrate so far. And we are, just as a reminder, giving away 22 giveaways for 2022 by heading to teachbetter.com/appreciation. Go fill up your coffee. We'll be right back. Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday, May the 4th. We have Taylor here with us. Taylor, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. I cannot tell you how I'm so biased in today's conversation because I am just excited to catch up with you, and we're just going to tag it during the interview. So it's kind of nice.
Right.
It'll be wonderful. We already have comments coming in of people being excited that you were on the show. And of course, Elijah jumping in saying Happy Star Wars Day. It is Wednesday, May the 4th. So I can only assume this is our reminder to everybody. Go throw on a Star Wars shirt, get excited for the chaos of the day. But Taylor, as we get started, would you mind just telling us a little about yourself? If educators are popping in this morning and don't know you, aren't familiar with the work you do in education, give us an update.
Awesome. So I had the pleasure of doing some clinical work under Rae. So that is how I got to know her. I was completely inspired by her. It was actually it was a funny story. I was supposed to be working with a different teacher, but something came up. And so my professor was like, hey, I'm going to put you with someone in 6th grade. I was like, all right. And that is honestly where I found my love for 6th grade. I teach 6th grade math in Plainfield, Illinois. So that's where I've been for a while. I taught 8th grade and 6th grade, and 6th grade is just, I love them. I have so much fun with them. And that's where I've been for the last 7 years.
So Taylor, so we have so much to talk about, but Carrie on our team reached out to me last night and said, oh my gosh, how do you know Taylor McCormick? And I was like, I don't know how to describe it. We taught together. She was in my classroom for a period of time, 112 years ago. I was like, I have no idea when that was. When did you graduate? What's the deal?
So I was at ISU from 2011 to 2015. So I was with you the winter of 2014, and then the spring of 2015 is then when I went home and student taught. So I was with you for that little clinical block spot.
Yes. And I had no idea you were in Plainfield, and we're right next to each other. I'm over in Naperville now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is super close. So wait, so you're not in Bloomington anymore. Okay.
I'm not. I just moved. It's been almost a year. I moved in June of last year. So it's been a big change. But I'm like, Plainfield, I can almost see Plainfield out my office window. That's so funny. So
yeah, well, and some of my students, even where I'm at in Plainfield, their home address is considered Naperville. So I'm on the north side of Plainfield. I'm very close.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I'm on the south side of Naperville. So we are just in a perfect setup here. I love this. So you're teaching right now. I'm sorry, I think you mentioned it, but what year of teaching is this for you?
This is year 7, which is insane. I don't know how it's my students all tell me what year they were born. I'm like, oh my God, you guys stay the same age, but I just get older and older and older.
No, it's the opposite. The students are getting older and older. You look the same, have the same energy. You haven't changed a bit. That's just what it is. So when you were getting into the education space, obviously there were a lot of educators that inspired you. I'd love to get into why you decided to even get into education in the first place. Obviously, then to have a lot of clinical opportunities and student teaching opportunities throughout your time until you graduated. But why Illinois State? Why did you become a teacher?
So Illinois, I had two older sisters that went to Illinois State. And as much as I was like, oh, I could totally go anywhere. Like, let's be real. I wanted to go where I would know some of my family. And I always kind of wanted to be a teacher. It was either be a teacher or be a dolphin trainer, and teacher was more attainable for me. So that was where I went with it. And then Illinois State is just the best teaching school in Illinois. And it's always what I would hear. So I was in between kind of Illinois State and Eastern, but knowing Illinois State was my goal. And so then when I got in there, it was kind of like I knew that's where I wanted to go.
Love it. It's so powerful. There's so many different stories I know I'll be able to share for Teacher Appreciation Week, but it's always interesting to hear how people got into making the decision to go pursue education. Elijah in the comments is saying, yeah, Taylor, just wait until you're older than the parents, and then it really freaks you out.
I'm not ready for that.
So true, though. It's so funny when you bump into a student years later who's like graduated from college and you're like, oh, that means that I'm ancient. I'm just
right.
That's so funny. Well, as we get into, go ahead.
I was going to say, going into middle school, it was kind of, people always asked, like, why middle school, why high school, why elementary school? People always, like, when you tell them, oh, I teach middle school, they're like, wait, you willingly do that? And so I just absolutely love the age group. When I was in middle school, I had a team of 4 teachers that I had in 8th grade that just were awesome. And like, they knew when you were in a good mood, they knew where you were in a bad mood. Like, they were just such great people. And like, they were always, middle school is the time of your life when kids are trying to like figure themselves out and when they kind of need that support. And so after having that when I was in middle school, I knew like that's what I wanted to be for my students one day.
Oh, which is such a powerful like element to drive you to know that you've had a model that you can see to say, this is what I'm looking for. These are the tweaks I want to add my own personal flair to that experience. So good. I would challenge all of our educators this morning. It's Wednesday, which means we are a few days into Teacher Appreciation Week. I've been seeing, Taylor, I'm sure you've been experiencing it, the donuts that are filling our school buildings, the funny little teacher appreciation celebrations, some free lunches possibly for our educators. And it's, I think, important that as we continue through this week, kind of remembering where we came from, not only why we go to work every day, but why we chose to even pursue this career. I think sometimes for educators, they're different. A lot of educators I speak to say, oh, I'm in education because I love the kids, but that may not have been the why that caused you to want to go into education. So kind of like that perspective, I think, is so powerful as we head into Teacher Appreciation Week.
Mm-hmm.
Something we do every single morning is document a moment of gratitude. So as we're getting started, Taylor, if you don't mind, we have an app that we use. It's called Happy Feed, and we document every single morning something that we're really appreciative for, something that we are grateful for. And what I like about this app, for those of you who are interested, it's a free app, and it allows you to go revisit these memories in a few different creative ways, which is what I like. So it's kind of like a good documentation to be able to celebrate not only what we're currently grateful for, but being reminded of what we've been grateful for in the past. If I was to ask you bright and early this morning, something that you are appreciative of or grateful for, what would you like to submit for our daily drop-in show?
Okay. So I'll have do a personal and professional one.
Okay.
Personally, what I'm grateful for are my niece and nephew. All I ever wanted to be in life was an aunt, and my sisters blessed me with the most perfect niece and nephew. Professionally, so yesterday our 7th grade boys volleyball coach was out sick, and so I was asked to step in, and someone that's not very much a volleyball coach. The big joke is I was like, all right, guys, don't let the balloon hit the ground. But I had so much fun with it. The kids were great. It was good to reconnect with old students. It was awesome.
Okay, anything with a balloon, I feel like, is a good brain break opportunity for students. If anyone needs a reminder, like, go find a balloon and there's so many games you could do with that.
Right. It was so funny. I was like, yeah, don't let the balloon touch the ground, and it's hot potato. Come on, we got this. And they were
There
all
we
like,
go.
oh my God.
So what are the directions you give? Because I know that so many of us have done this game, but okay, so you get handed a balloon, you blow it up, you tie it. What's the directions in getting the kids started?
Yeah, just don't let it touch the ground.
That's it.
I kind of give them the littlest direction and then, all right, run with it. Don't let it hit the ground too quick.
You can't hold it, right? Like you can't just you gotta be popping
Right. You
it
got
out.
it. So that's what I was telling the kids with the volleyball. I'm like, you can't catch it and then throw it. You got to just keep running with it. You got to just bump that spike, the foundations.
I love it. We have a lot of friends in the comments this morning. Good morning to Andrea. She's saying, yes, she always gets that response when she says that she loves teaching middle school. That strange face that many people have when you say that. Celebrating aunt life. So many people. I am not an aunt yet, but I am dying to be. So I fully support. I love that. If you live close to them, do you get to see them often?
So my nephew and my sister and my brother-in-law, they're in Joliet. And then I have my niece and my sister and my brother-in-law, they live in Kansas. So we don't get to see them as much, but I try to FaceTime them. I mean, all the time, which is God bless technology for that.
That's amazing. So powerful. Taylor, I want to keep getting into your experience in education, not only over the last few years, but as you got started in your career. And I'm sure you have big goals and aspirations coming up here. But before we do that, we're going to do some good news. We're going to do some goofy holidays for today. So we'll be right back for that. Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. It is May 4th. I can't even say it like May the 4th is what I just keep wanting to say. But we appreciate those who are here with us. We have Taylor McCormick here with us, and we have just begun to dive into some conversation. As we get into some good news and some holidays, Taylor, I'd love to find a reason to celebrate. I think this is a good opportunity to add some humor into our day, but obviously also bring this to students or bring this to colleagues to build relationships. So you up for some celebrating?
Always.
Okay, so here are some weird holidays. Some of them I think I can celebrate, and some of them I'm going to take a pass, but I want to get your thoughts on it. First of all, like we had noted, it is Star Wars Day. So for many people, they'll be wearing their Star Wars shirts and celebrating May the 4th. Any thoughts on how you might celebrate Star Wars Day?
See, I don't know if I should admit this on May the 4th. I haven't seen the Star Wars. However, one of my really good friends, her and her husband are huge Star Wars fans. So anytime that there's Star Wars or superhero things coming up, I usually just ask them for ideas on something fun I can do. And then they just give me ideas.
Perfect. So you'll celebrate kind of through the transitive property. They'll celebrate, so therefore you'll kind of celebrate.
Right, exactly. Pull some math into it. Transitive property, we get it all going.
I love it. It's also National Candied Orange Peel Day, which I don't think I've ever had a candied orange peel, and it doesn't sound appealing. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I mean, I guess I'm trying to think, are those the jelly orange slices? Because that's what I'm envisioning.
That would be delicious. I'll eat those. This is literally an orange peel that is candied, which
it's interesting.
I don't know
that I've ever heard of that before.
But maybe if you run into it, take a bite of it today. It's also, which seems to match, National Orange Juice Day. So maybe as you were celebrating Star Wars, you need to incorporate some oranges in your life this morning. I don't know.
Yes, I do usually make for breakfast. I have little orange juice, and then I put this vanilla protein in it, and it tastes like a dreamsicle.
Yum! That's a great idea.
It's pretty delicious.
Oh, I can get on board with that. Well, today, make sure you do that because you have to celebrate Orange Day. It's also National Renewal Day, National Skilled Trades Day. Skilled Trades Day would be really interesting, celebrating all those in the workforce, the trades industry. That would be something to bring into the classroom. I like that. It's also National Weather Observers Day. I don't know about you, but the weather's been crazy here in Illinois. I know we have viewers from all over the community, not only in the U.S. and Canada, but but listeners, thankfully, all over the world. I would love to hear what the weather's like today in everyone's communities. I don't know if that's going to make us jealous, though, Taylor. The weather doesn't look so good today.
I know we've had I feel like this is the coldest, wettest spring yesterday I was supposed to work a track meet outside, but then when they asked me to coach volleyball inside instead, I'm like, oh, of course.
Yes, because it was like rainy and chilly. So if you're in the comments this morning, give us a little degree. What's the weather today for you, or even just the weather right now? I can give you an update. If you're in the Chicagoland area, it is gloomy and cold. It's like 40 degrees and gray.
Right. Yeah, so that's literally all there is to it.
Really all there is to it. Last but not least, two people that are celebrating today. One of them I know, and the other makes me sound old because I don't know who this is, but one of them who I am a fan of, Audrey Hepburn. It's a World Audrey Hepburn Day. Love a good Audrey Hepburn movie. And then it's also Noah Beck Day, who's a TikTok star. So,
oh, all right.
It's interesting, Taylor, when you had mentioned kind of the jobs that you could have pursued, right? It was either education or I think you said being a dolphin trainer. Is that what you wanted to do?
That was my other aspiration.
It's funny because here on the show, there seems to be these moments of coincidences because, somebody will mention something and it will align to our good news article or a specific holiday that day. I don't know how the stars aligned perfectly, but our good news story today has to do with dolphins. So I feel like it's very fitting for you.
That's awesome.
So as you are thinking through, I love all the comments of the weather. We're going to have to go through the weather all over the world here in a second with the comments. So make sure if you haven't added your weather into the comments, you do so, because apparently we're about to do a weather update. But for a good news story, I think this would be so good to bring into the classroom. So this is just my opinion. This was just published within the last 2 months. And the headline says, "Clever dolphins helped rescuers find a drowning man lost in the ocean." So as you go through the article, it talks about how there was a man that was out in a boat that capsized, and he was truly lost in the middle of the ocean, needing to be rescued. There were 3 dolphins that actually led rescuers to finding this man in the ocean. They said it took hours, but this article is going into how intelligent dolphins are and how not only did the dolphins identify the man in distress, but then also helped lead rescuers to the man's body. He did survive. He's been in the hospital for quite some time, but is still alive. And they claim that he will be leaving the hospital here in just a few days with his life saved by 3 dolphins.
That's awesome. See? Dolphins are great. Dolphins are fun animals.
Yes. So I think just special shout out. I'm not sure how we can celebrate May the 4th Dolphin Day, but hey, a good opportunity. I feel like a good news article you can bring into the classroom, either as to foster discussions or even build relationships in the teacher's lounge, like a fun fact. I don't know.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about your experience when you obviously started at the school that you're at now. Was it tricky to build relationships with a brand new community? How did you get started with that?
So, great question. I actually started my career at Indian Trail Middle School, which is just another middle school in Plainfield. And we were in teams at that time. And so I obviously got very close with my team members, and I just loved it there. I loved the staff. I loved the students. I just jumped all in. It was a blast. And then after 3 years, enrollment had changed. So I had to be moved to where I was now for that reason. And at the beginning, I was full disclosure, so upset. I cried because it was my school was my family, my people. I was with them all the time. But so I moved to my school I'm at now, and they were super awesome. I remember the 8th grade language arts teacher, shout out Mrs. Thomas. She totally welcomed me and introduced me to everybody. And the PE department, Mr. Osterreich, Mr. Van Duzer, Mr. Scott, they always were how's it going? Checking in on me. And so I really felt like I was welcomed with open arms. And so I know that I was very grateful for that, because I know that's not always the case in other buildings or professions, but I felt welcomed, and that made the transition so much easier.
Well, and I can only imagine that you being so thankful for the community, just truly being so eager to get to know you and welcome you into this new atmosphere, that you then acknowledge the importance of you needing to turn around and do that for all the new staff that I'm sure have come in since that time to make sure that people feel welcomed into that community.
Absolutely.
So good. Andrea's commenting a little sneak peek. Andrea, I think your comment's a spoiler here, but we'll just talk about it anyway. There's a new course coming out in our Teach Better Academy this summer around building relationships with colleagues, kind of like the struggle of entering into any new community and needing to build those relationships. And even when you're welcomed with open arms, it's intimidating to walk in and have 50 new faces that you need to meet at a staff level, much less even getting to know your students. So kind of a spoiler there of some good courses coming out in our academy. Before we transition here, Taylor, I think we need to do a weather update because there are a lot of comments here.
All right.
So, okay, looks like we just have to hold on until next week here in the Midwest at least. 70s and 80s apparently are coming next week. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed on that. I'm not feeling too Erin is over in Michigan. She sits in the 40s right now. That's not great.
No.
I feel like there's some good fall, fashion that we can wear with 40 degrees, but I'm just not ready for it yet. Right. Lori's commenting that today will be a high of 60s, but next week she's excited for 80s where she lives in Ohio. So see, lots of good weather. I love this. Taylor, we're going to get into some discussion around Teacher Appreciation Week and also taking questions from our community if we have them as we enter into our brainstorm bank. So we'll be right back. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning into Daily Drop-In. We are in our brainstorm bank segment, which is an opportunity that we have every single morning to be able to ask our community if you need anything. We know educators are constantly brainstorming and problem solving through so many different hurdles. And so we never want you to feel like you are brainstorming alone. Feel free to throw your question or maybe a little perspective of your situation in the comments. And Taylor and I don't promise that we'll have the perfect answer, but we'd love to be a brainstorm partner for you, whether it be how to foster relationships with colleagues, a student behavior that you're currently working through, something that you're problem solving, maybe having to do with your classroom design, whatever it is, feel free to throw that in the comments and we'll do our very, very best to support you. Our theme this week is all about teacher appreciation. And Taylor, I would love to dive into more of the teachers not only that you've become, but also the teachers that have worked with you, alongside you, that you've been able to learn from throughout your career, kind of give them some shout outs as well. So we talked a little bit about why you got into education. I'd love to dive into what it was like as you got started in this field, and then also what the last few years of being a teacher has been like for you. So is there a spot that you're drawn to that you want to get started with?
Nothing that I can really specific. I think when I started in education, we were in the middle school format and we had teams, and I just think how that completely made me feel supported and had me feel ready. I think teaming is just awesome. And we don't do that as much anymore, but so I think for those new teachers, again, I think it is hard, like you said, building those relationships with colleagues. Teaming allowed us to do that. So I always try to, I know sometimes as teachers we're workhorses and we just want to work all the time, like even like working through lunch and things like that. But something I've taken with me is that, one day a week I might have like kids come eat in my room, or 1 or 2 days a week I'll go to the teacher's lounge, and just making sure that, as easy as it is to just be tired or work through lunch, and it's just important to have that community feel, because then we just feel more supported and we're not as burnt out.
It's interesting, Taylor. I kind of mentioned this on the show yesterday, and I don't want to dwell on it, but I have been feeling this theme, which I think is just talking about an elephant in the room, where teachers are tired. They're not feeling very appreciated, even though it's Teacher Appreciation Week. It's been a really long road over the last few years. And I've had some hard conversations with educators that are, looking at other options? Do they stay in the current role they're in? Do they change roles? Do they change schools? Do they leave education altogether? I mean, it sounds taboo to be discussing it, but the field is a very challenging field, and educators obviously want to be fulfilled in the work that they're doing. As you're thinking through not only building relationships with your colleagues, but also the importance of the work that we're doing, what are your thoughts on how the last few years can help actually make our, make our field better? What are your thoughts on kind of how it's changed you as an educator?
I think that if I go back to March 2020, which is terrifying to think about, luckily I supervised the 8th grade DC trip, and we literally got back, and like 2 weeks later, the world shut down. So I'm like so happy we were able to get that trip in for those students. But I think if anything, I mean, we were going from in the classroom, not really on technology, to then getting these computers. And I think it just showed that teachers, we are so resilient, and we can be given, I mean, literally a day's notice. Oh, let me change things up. And I think we're so used to making decisions and making changes within the classroom. And the thought of teaching online was a little scary, but I mean, throw something at us and we're just going to make it work. And that's just how strong teachers are. And that's sometimes we have to remind ourselves of that.
I think that's so important. We are able to overcome those massive hurdles because educators so universally are creative problem solvers. That is such a important characteristic that you see in educators. And I love that not only that was maybe put to the test to an extreme over the last few years, but so important as we head into, May, and as we head into next year, really thinking through how can we continue to be creative problem solvers. Obviously, we met very early in your career. You were an incredible educator to work with. I loved having you in my classroom, even though it does feel like 120 years ago. What has developed in terms of like your passions in education? What have you found your strengths to be? What areas have really sparked your interest that you've learned more about? Kind of how did that go for you, not only as a student in other classrooms, but now having your own classroom and being, can I call you a veteran teacher? I mean, you're almost a decade in.
No, you can't.
You're an expert.
I kind of pride myself on being good at connecting with the kids. I heard a quote a couple years ago, that kind of stuck with me, that the kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that is so important because, and I always stress to my students, like, you guys have stuff going on outside of school just as often as I do. And I think it's important for them to know, like, yeah, we might have a math quiz or something, and you might have had an awful night the night before. Just make sure that you like communicate that with me. And I think in our building, there's not as many sports opportunities as there is for 7th and 8th grade with 6th grade. And so I've always said, like, if you guys are into other sports, like, let me know. I've been to lacrosse games. I've been to dance competitions. I've been to hockey games. And it's just, I really want my students to feel supported, not only as like academically, but as like real people. And I think that's important as well.
What would be your go-to suggestion for an educator listening to you saying, ooh, her strength is connecting with students? Any like challenges or ideas that you can offer our community here to obviously connect with students maybe a little bit better, maybe try something out they haven't pursued yet? Any thoughts on that? Any challenges of how to keep connecting with kids?
Yeah. So one thing I started doing that I stole this idea actually from a teacher who actually used to work at Evans, where I know that you used to be. I took this idea from Melissa Magnus. I think that's how you say her last name.
Yeah, she's wonderful. Shout out to Melissa.
Yes, I used her idea, which was pits and peaks. And I think that totally changed the game for me. So I did it. I don't do it as much now that we're in person, but I would like to get back to that. Basically, like the kids know that a peak is something good going on and a pit is maybe something not so great. And so during when we were remote, I felt like that was a great way for me to connect with the kids and for me to get to know what's going on with their life. And it was like, sometimes it was awesome and they had so much good going on. And then sometimes it was kind of like, oh my God, like these kids are going through things that I've never gone through. So that was super interesting. And then, and now being in person, I think the other thing I've tried is when you have, the challenging student, or maybe a student you haven't always connected with. I've started to do like little lunch groups, and like I explain to the kids and parents, like, it's not a lunch detention. They're not in trouble. It's just a way, again, when you get them one-on-one, or maybe a couple kids, they're just much more willing to open up and maybe explain to you what caused their behavior or things like that.
I love both of those ideas. Lunch with students has been something that I've seen so much success with. It's obviously challenging with COVID. You want to make sure you're being as safe as possible always, for all of our teachers and students out there. But Pits and Peaks is something that I have seen so much success with, and it is just such a simple idea. And I love that you brought it up, because that is a suggestion that every single educator can choose to do in their classroom today if they so choose. There's so many different ways to implement this simple concept. But what I really value about bringing that into kind of the norm of your classroom, or something that you choose to incorporate with students, is you really are opening the door to feedback. You're opening the door to gaining information from students and actually allowing them to communicate with you about themselves, which I think is so powerful when you're able to foster a learning environment where students are able to celebrate and identify areas they're not so happy about, whether it be a failure on their part or something that maybe you can improve as a teacher. So love Pits and Peaks.
I remember like the first time I did it, I remember I like called my social worker and I was like, oh my God, like there's things going on. And she's like, it's okay. Like you just, because it's there. When is a kid ever going to like raise their hand in class and like, oh, like I lost something over the weekend, or my parents are fighting, or things like that. And I think that was very eye-opening for me, is like, we obviously know that they have so much going on outside of school, but I think sometimes we lose sight of that. And sometimes we're like, okay, but you have a missing math homework assignment. And so that really kind of helped me like remember how much, like, again, just as much as we have lives outside of the classroom, so do the kids, and just being sure to remember that.
I do really feel that is so important. A lot of educators that I've been able to talk with over the last few weeks that have been sharing some frustrations with our role. I think, educators have been put through, hell and high waters over the last few years, but gaining perspective of the other things going on outside of the hurdles that just exist within our job, and specifically, is so important. An element of that is understanding what's going on with our students, which is so powerful. I know internally with our team, for our team members that are watching, we actually do Pits and Peaks every single week internally. We have about 24 members of our internal Teach Better team members that work day in, day out to keep the Teach Better team rolling. So for those of you who have been over to teachbetter.com recently, the blogs, the podcasts, the speakers network, the masterminds, it takes a whole crew. And internally with our team, every single week, we ask, what's your pit? What's your peak? And it really does foster a space for people to be like, oh my gosh, I didn't have a pit this week. That's something to celebrate. Or here's like 15 things that didn't go wrong. And we can all kind of gain perspective by having the opportunity in the space to share those things. As a teacher, if I was to say, okay, Taylor, I want to challenge you to do Pits and Peaks today, how would you do it? Would you do like an exit slip? Would it be just a discussion? Would you jot it in a notebook? How would you do it with your students today?
So again, shout out to Melissa. I used her format. She actually did it on a Google Slides presentation. And then she shared that, or I think honestly you can, oh my God, Nashville is the greatest city on earth. I love it. Hi Stacey. Sorry. I just had like the dog from Up, when he sees squirrel, I see Nashville.
I love it. If you're listening on the podcast, then we just put a comment on the screen that made Taylor get off topic.
What were we talking about?
We were talking about, implementing Pits
and Peaks. Yes.
And you said Magnus had a suggestion of how to do it with a Google slide.
Yeah, so she did it on Google Slides. And so that was nice, because then you just send it out on Google Slides. You can read them as they turn in. I think you literally can do it on a piece of paper, Like today, my students are going to be working on this little like data presentation, and it's kind of at your own pace. So you can say like, hey, when you need a break, like I think it's very like you can implement it, and you can have like I have them do 3 and 3. You could have them do 1 and 1. Like I think there are so many ways. It's a very easy way to again get insight from your students and implement, even if it's just like a piece of notebook paper or something.
Right. I was just thinking that, like, tear a half sheet of paper or index card, pass it out, even as an exit slip as they're getting started with their learning for the day, or even as they're leaving your classroom. Maybe they're reflecting on how their work session. I know a lot of our community here does student goal setting and reflection just at the end of the day, depending on the type of class they facilitate. So again, it's more about opening the door, because you're going to get a lot of notes that have, the basics on there of, oh, my peak was I got to see my friends this morning, or, oh, my pit was my alarm went off too early. And those are good things to know. But you're right. When students are able to open up and be a little vulnerable and say, hey, I'm really struggling with something that's really impacting me, we are better teachers for it. So important. I do want to give a special shout out before I forget, Taylor, that because it's Teacher Appreciation Week, the Teach Better team is giving away 22 items for 2022. You all need to go apply because it closes Friday. We're giving out a ton of different items. I heard a rumor that we're giving out more than 22 with how many people have filled out the form. So you know me, I love cheating the system. Go in and make sure that you submit. You only need to submit once. Head over to teachbetter.com/appreciation. We're giving away anything from like free professional development, free tickets to the Teach Better conference, but like the things that I want, because I'm a loser, we have like life-size Jenga and like life-size like Connect 4 games that we're shipping out to classrooms, and I think that would be a blast. Like fun yard games, Taylor. I feel like you would like good big yard games, right?
Oh, absolutely. Those are so like you can just use them in the classroom and use them in your personal life.
That's what I'm saying. Like if it ships quick enough, enjoy it with your students. But when the classroom, when the year ends and we're all packing up our stuff, bring that sucker home and play it with your kids at home in the yard.
Right.
I love it. We have a special segment on Wednesdays, which I really love. It's a special time for us to kind of give some recommendations to our community and be able to say, hey, as you're kicking off your Wednesday, how can we continue to be learners? How can we continue to explore? So we're going to get into that in just a second. I know we have some recommendations, but Taylor, I do want to throw one more question at you related to our brainstorm bank, and that has to do with your soapbox topic. So if you had one message that you wanted to share with our Teach Better community, one message that you wanted teachers to hear from you and really take away this morning, what would you challenge them with? What would you share this morning?
I think the most important thing is just remembering why you got into education. I think it is so easy in the last 2-3 years with COVID, and like teaching's hard. There's been days where, I come home and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go find something else to do. But when you have those good moments, just really treasure those. I know, like when I taught in Rae's class, when I left, the students made me some like big card where they all signed it. And so I think I've totally, I keep those, and it's just kind of remembering. And even like a couple months ago, I had a student reach out to me that was in Rae's class. And I remember I had messaged you and I was like, oh my God, do you remember so-and-so? And so I think as hard as teaching is just you remember why you did it. I know that can be challenging sometimes, but just really stay focused and remember the kids. And when you're feeling burnt out, it's okay to take your day or take your time, but just really making sure you push through, because the kids deserve it. The kids deserve an excited teacher, a ready teacher. And so in order for you to be your best self, you got to make sure you're prepared for that.
Such a good reminder as we're heading into Teacher Appreciation Week, really remembering your why, remembering not only your why that gets you up every morning, but your why that allows you to even be in this field, and making sure that you are, problem solving through if you have any hurdles, bringing people into your life that can support you so you can ensure that you're giving as much as you can to your students. Really, really, really powerful, Taylor. We'll be right back with recommendations we love. friends. It is Wednesday, May the 4th, and we really appreciate you sticking with us here on the Daily Drop-In Morning Show. If you are just tuning in now, you got to head back to the show because we did just share so much good details, so many good challenges and pieces of information. But of course, before we wrap up, we want to give you some recommendations we love, which is a segment we love to do on Wednesdays. I really like this, Taylor, because it really does open up the opportunity for us to be explorers, us to continue to emphasize the importance of educators being learners. And I know you as an educator have had so many different resources and people that have supported you in the work that you're doing. And if we can bring that new perspective to somebody in our community, then hey, that's wonderful. So I know when we were talking off the show, you had a recommendation for a book that you really loved. Would you share a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. So those of you that teach in Illinois, back in December, I went to this conference. It was called the Raising Student Achievement Conference, or the RSAC. And there was one of the keynote speakers the first day. His name was Chase Melky, and he is a teacher and speaker and just all the things out in Michigan. And he wrote a book called The Burnout Cure, like reinventing your love for teaching. And after seeing him speak, I was like, oh, I have to get the book. I have to. So of course I went like right to the conference store, whatever, bought the book. And of course, and then a couple weeks later, actually, I still hadn't read it. And the Kane County ROE who put on the conference did a book study with the book. And so I felt like that was the perfect way for me to dive into it, because I felt like and it is just, I loved it. It is a very quick read. It just kind of reminds you, it just gives you like ideas and like, again, everything they're telling you, you probably already know, but hearing it and hearing those ideas, like if you're feeling this way, maybe try this. If you're feeling this way, maybe try that. And I felt like I've recommended it to like everybody. I had one of my friends buy it. I've like told my principal about it. And I just think that everybody, if you're feeling burnt out, this is like the perfect way to just re-inspire yourself and remember why you got into this profession.
Give us that title again so educators can go search on Amazon to go pick it up.
Yes, it is called The Burnout Cure by Chase Melky. His last name is Mielke.
Wonderful. Now, I always love a good, read. I typically listen to podcasts, but every so often when there's a really good book out there, you definitely got to go pick that up, which I always know that there's literally so many resources, but a book study is my favorite way. If I have to read a book, I want to do it via a book study.
Right. And I felt like, again, it really made sure I was reading the book. I was like talking about it. I was getting other people's perspective. I felt like it was really a perfect way for me.
So good. I'm excited to hear if anybody in our community is looking to pick that book up and start a book study. I know our Teach Better community does book studies all the time. I know our ambassador community does book studies quite frequently that are exclusive to that crew. But if anyone here is listening, they want to pick up the book and do a book study, whether you're listening live with us now or catching this later on the podcast, please feel free to reach out. We have so many different members of our community that we love to connect to have those valuable moments. A book study is a great way to get involved. So if any of you go pursue that, keep us updated. We'll get a little crew together. It's a great recommendation. Taylor, I know that there has been so much discussion so far, and you have a full day ahead of you with students. Before we head out, I'd love for our community to be able to connect with you. Is there a way that our community can get connected to you to continue this conversation if they have questions or want to continue to learn about the work that you're doing?
Of course. So I do have a teacher Twitter. It's just long, so that's why I couldn't put it in my little handle. It is at Miss McCormick HG. So MS and then my last name, MCCORMICK, just HG, because that's the school that I'm at. And so that would be, I know I was like very nervous to start a teacher Twitter because of course, like, as you know, 10, 15 years ago, it was like, never use social media. But I really have slowly started to, dip my toes in and use it a little bit. So that would be I check it all the time. So that would be a good way to get a hold of me.
I love it. I know so many educators love and always follow, but the importance of like direct messaging, like if you received a direct message, you would respond to it, right? So we can encourage our community, go reach out, not only follow somebody on Twitter, but direct message them, engage in a conversation. It's a great way to, again, foster those relationships even in a virtual environment.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for waking up so early to be able to talk shop with us before your full day. It was awesome being able to obviously hear about the work that you're doing just to catch up, but I really appreciate the little tips and tricks we were able to share to get people all set for Wednesday, May the 4th.
Right.
So good. For everyone else, do not forget Wednesday. It is a full day today here on the Teach Better community. You need to make sure you submit to win the 22 items for 2022 over at teachbetter.com/appreciation. We have brain break today later this afternoon. So after you get through a full workday, make sure you grab an adult beverage and tune in for that fun. I assume Dr. Dave Schmidt's live this afternoon, but I'm not quite sure. So definitely tune in at 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Central for brain break. And then maybe the most exciting, which I know is silly to say because we just had a great conversation, but Mickey Smith Jr. is going to be live with Katie Miglin later this afternoon. So lots of good things in store for you all to engage with our Teach Better family. Taylor, again, thank you so much for coming live with us, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye, friends.